All right, and yeah, it gives me great pleasure to finally be able to, join the town hall meeting. So yeah, today, we want to address, or just want to talk about, fourth industrial revolution that everybody's raving on and on about. And before we even start dismantling, the fourth industrial revolution and look into, say, all right, fine, what should we be doing? How are business supposed to be reacting? How is government, what kind of strategy government is supposed to be looking at? The first thing we need to do is we need to look back at where we come from the first industrial revolution, all right? And I just want to give that brief background as to, okay, where are we coming from in order to figure out what were the main drivers that have propelled us to be at a point where we are today, where we are talking about artificial intelligence and we are talking about robotics and so forth. So now, around about early 19th century, we are seeing the start of the first industrial revolution, largely led by the Brits or the British, and with their invention, or when they came up with steam-powered printing. All right, and you can imagine steam-powered printing at the time. That was quite a revolutionary thing, because now it meant that communication could move, right? You could mass print information on paper and so forth, all right? And that is a communication revolution that we are seeing, all right? And then round about the mid 19th century, still within the first industrial revolution, then there was the telegram, all right, which was also sort of like a game changer. People now could communicate more effectively, but obviously not as effectively as you would later then see in the second revolution with the telephone system, all right? But then you've got the telegram coming into the picture, all right? And then right after that, the Brits then, now that's your communication network or communication technology. Then we see that now the Brits also discovered something or came across something, coal. So now all of a sudden there was a new source of energy, all right? And meaning that now energy becomes a very important factor into this entire thing, right? And then it was not long before the Brits now figured out that, all right, you know what, we need to take this coal and harvest it so that we can actually move economic activity. So now we're seeing the steam engine still within the first industrial revolution, where we're seeing the steam engine being invented. And guess what? This then talks to nation transport and logistics. So now you see that there is an emergence of certain new technologies, all right, within very three critical spaces within an economy, that is communication, where I speak about the telegram and we sing the printing press, the steam printing press, and then so that talks to your communication technology. And then the next one you are seeing, all right, discovery of coal, all right, and so meaning a new source of energy, right, and it drastically changes the way in which economic activity moves, or the way economic activity is being powered up. And then we are at a later stage, then we are seeing the steam engine invention, right, whereby now they put the steam engine on the roll rates, and now you can now move economic activity. So now what am I talking to? These are the three main pillars for any of the revolutions that we have experienced, since the first industrial revolution. Now let's go and look at the second industrial revolution, right? Again, the three factors, right? We are seeing that, all right, and it is being led by America, centralized electricity, boom. But you know what? Now that talks to what you're a lot, you're able to move your economic activity and power it up, right? And then the next thing that we are seeing is we seeing the telephone system. I mean, this was a game changer. The telephone system was a hell of a game changer because all of a sudden, people can communicate, right, more effectively. And then we saw the TV coming out, and then the radio came out. This is all in the second industrial revolution, right? And then just as when you are looking at these great inventions, then we are seeing something that is really incredible. Guess what? Enter Henry Ford into the picture, and Henry Ford, what does he do? He puts cars on the road, right? Now, again, telephone, TV, radio that talks to your communication network, all right? Emergence of new technology in communication, right? And then what do we see? We see also your Texas oil. So that's a new source of energy or power, right? So now that is to power up economic activity. So that's a new thing as well that comes out. And then we sing Henry Ford with putting cars on the road. And that is an emergence of a new technology for mobility to move economic activity. All right. So why do I now go to these things? Is it is very important for us to understand that at any given time, the major revolutions have been underpinned by emergence and convergence of these technologies in these three spheres. Number one being your communication, right? Number two being new sources of energy. So that's energy, all right? So you get a new energy network or a new source of energy. And number three being your transport and logistics, right? Being able to move communication technology, right? Now, these are what you would call, or what is generally called, your general technology, general purpose technology platform. All right. Now, for any country to be able to compete globally and to be able to keep advancing, we need to understand that we need to be taking care of these three spheres in terms of all the industrial revolution or whatever industrial revolution that we are in, right? Now, right now, there's big talk of the fourth industrial revolution, right? What are we seeing that is different? So what is the new emergence? You've got to ask yourself, and you've got to take it to an alignment in terms of what has emerged in terms of communication, right? What's the new technology that has emerged? And then you've got to ask yourself, what has emerged in terms of new sources of energy to power up economic activity? And then next thing you've got to ask yourself, what are the new modes of transport, logistics, and so forth, right? Now, well into the fourth industrial revolution, what we are seeing is we are currently now experiencing or going through a paradigm shift, all right? A shift in the way in which we, number one, manage economic activity. Number two, the way in which we move economic activity, and the way in which we efficiently power up economic activity. So I'll keep going to these three pillars because that is how critical they are. Right. Now we go to the next point. We say, all right, fine. Now, well in the third industrial revolution, what are other countries doing? Now, here's something that was very, very interesting. Now, if you think about it, right? If fossil fuel, or if we are still plugged into an energy source that peaked in the second industrial revolution, and we are now in the fourth industrial revolution, exactly, we might find ourselves in a bit of a peril, because now the countries that we hope to compete with, your industrialized nations and other developing nations, if they are already on this new technology, this new general purpose technology platform, and we are still plugged in, our businesses are still dependent on, technology platform that peaked well in the second industrial revolution, then that has to make you think about exactly where and what we should be looking at in terms of as a country. Now, here are the things that I've been, through various talks and delivering some workshops around the fourth industrial revolution, right? What we are moving into a space where now, all of a sudden, the power that sits in your hand, right, is so powerful. But the trouble that we have, or the challenge that we have as a country, and in terms of the people having the kind of skills and the kind of knowledge that can help them to be able to fully exploit the technology that is at their disposal, has been, lacking in a great sense thereof, right? So now, as a country, or let's talk about you as an individual, right? As an individual, you need to be asking yourself, all right, how do I remain relevant in this so-called fourth industrial revolution? And I use the word or the phrase fourth industrial revolution with so much caution, because there is so much that I find that in a lot of discussions, in a lot of spaces, you find that there's so much that we don't fully understand, and we are yet to truly fully understand. And you're trying to get pointers from left, right, and center. But here are the key main factors that will be affecting you as an individual, and that will be affecting business, all right? And that will also be affecting government, right? Now, I like to talk about the AAA threat, all right? And the AAA threat is, in recent times, what did we see? We saw Standard Bank close 91 of its branches, all right? Whether they liked it or not, whether it meant that so many people would lose their jobs and so forth, is they had to make a business decision, all right? And the business decision was that if we don't transform and move on with the technology that has now come in, and that is our competitors are actually taking advantage of, for the sake of being worried that people are going to lose jobs, then they would run a risk, like any other company. They would run a risk where they would not be able to remain in business and to compete, all right, and hopefully compete successfully, or be able to stay abreast of the rest of the competition that is out there, right? And we are seeing now the situation whereby, I'm going back to the AAA threat, right? And I'll just explain what the AAA threat is. Okay, it's the 3 A's. Number one is automation, all right? So here's the thing. Think about it this way. We've never really needed accountants. What we've needed is accounting, all right? Now, meaning that the activity of an accountant sitting in front of a computer, and he's doing whatever he's doing in order to crunch numbers and so forth, right? And he would probably be sitting, or she would probably be sitting for a couple of hours just to be able to get to a certain output that they need in order to present whatever they are presenting. We are able now to take what the accountant would be doing, and we are able to now program a computer, or program an app, or a piece of software that will then be able to take what the accountant used to do in about 4 hours, and this app would be able to do it in like a few minutes or so, less than a minute, all right? And essentially what you're seeing, so that is automation, right? Just as I put it in layman's terms, I'm trying to be as simple and as clear as possible. And then the next factor that we've got to consider, which I call one of the AAA factors or threats that one has to consider, is Asia. All right. Now, when I refer to Asia, we're talking about India. We're talking about your Asianic countries, your Asian countries like your China, and so forth. All right. Now, even though they jumped in on the third industrial revolution at a not at an earlier stage of the third industrial revolution, but what happened is, you are able to see that the Chinese and the Indians basically embraced the technology at the time when we were still early in the stages of the third industrial revolution. And you can see by the way in which a lot of the work, or the labor force that is currently supplying most of the world, be it in America, or be it in the UK, there's a lot of labor force that is coming from India. and as well as China. Case in point is one of the companies that I was working with, and I was doing training over there. They are in the space of artificial intelligence and robotics, cognitive automation, and so forth. I'll not mention the company name, but I was doing some training over there, and 70% of their staff complement was actually experts, right? And now, if you look at a company that is based in South Africa with a 70% of a staff complement in terms of the people that are actually doing the work, then it leads you to really rethink and really see the magnitude in terms of how these countries in Asia have been able to make sure that, or the people they have been able to acquire a skill set that is better suited to be able to service the demands of new technology or new IT infrastructure that is coming out, right? But in South Africa, unfortunately, we haven't been quite as good at being able to do that. So now you have now when you have that kind of situation, so it clearly shows you just how far behind we are as a country. And then you can start saying, all right, where do we fix this? Now, you as an individual, if you are in the space and you're asking yourself, all right, fine, I need to stay abreast. Then we look to those countries and you ask yourself, all right, what is it that these guys have where you find that in one company, there's like 70% of them in South Africa doing the skills. And when I asked this company, why is it that you are, your ratio is sitting at 30 South African and 70%, experts from India. And he said, you know what? The challenge is that we are not finding the right skills in terms of the types of skill set that we need when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to cognitive automation or robotics, right? And obviously, this company or these companies are driven by pressure to deliver, pressure from clients. So, it may be a bit more expensive for them to acquire or to bring in experts, but at the end of the day, as a business, requirement, they're left with not much of a choice, but to get those people to come in and actually do the work that South Africans could be doing. But because of our skill set, then yeah, we find ourselves being out in the cold as South Africans, right? So clearly you can see that there's a serious disconnect between industry and educational institutions, because you know what, you'd say, all right, here are IT graduates, right, that you can bring in. And still, because of the high pressure and the demand, we're living in an instant instant world where things or delivery or results are required in a shorter amount of time. So, these are some of the factors that one then looks at. And then the last A, remember the first A, I said it was what? It was automation. The next A, I said it was Asia, the Asia effect upon the rest of the world. All right. And then the last one is abundance. All right. And what I mean by abundance, really, today we are no longer living in a world whereby, a lot of things or we worry about functionality as such. And what I simply mean is that anybody or any company out there, they will create a car that is just as good enough as the next car manufacturer. So now, meaning that you are having an abundance of things to choose from, right? Or different types of vehicles that you can choose from. And in terms of functionality, you know that it will more or less, serve the purpose that you are buying the vehicle, just to make an example. So to better clarify that, if you decide that you're going to buy a kettle, right? You know for a fact that it doesn't matter what kettle that you pick most of the time. Anyway, 90% of the time, if you go to a retailer and they're selling kettles and you're looking for a kettle, you're spoiled for choice, right? And meaning that there's abundance of products, right? So now, as a business, how does this affect you? It means that now you are no longer competing on functionality, because the market knows, or the would-be buyer knows, that any kettle that they buy is most likely going to work, all right? And it's most likely going to be a standard, kettle that, what do you want the kettle to do? To boil you water. But now it means that you have to find a way in which you will be able to appeal to the would-be buyer, right, in a sea of abundance of kettles. You have to find a way in which your kettle stands out. So that's another effect of what? Abundance, whereby you are competing for a market no longer based on functionality, but now based on something else that can actually talk to the masses. So now, three threats or three factors that are currently today factors that you have to consider as an individual. So now I go back. As a business, you ask yourself, this product that I'm producing, or whatever it is that I'm taking out into market, now you are no longer just competing with other manufacturers or competing with service providers in your country, you're competing globally, right? And now the first one is the task that I've got to do in order to produce a product that I've got to produce, right? Can these tasks be automated, right? And I can tell you, most of the time, you find that there's somebody already automating this task somewhere sitting in one of the Asian countries, right? So that is a factor that you've got to consider, because if you are not automating something that can be automated, it's only a matter of time that you will find yourself in trouble or your business in trouble. That's number one. Number two, right? The Asia effect. Can somebody produce this at a cheaper cost? Because now, if you notice, one of the things that it has become appealing to your Silicon Valley's shipping off work, just to make an example, programming work or accounting work to the Asian countries, is because these guys, they're coming in at a cheaper cost, and they are promising to deliver it faster, right? So that's your Asia effect. And then abundance, you've got to ask yourself, if this product that I'm producing, is somebody else also producing this product? And, are they producing it better than me? What is it that could really threaten preference for my product, by another product? So these three factors, if they are not clearly considered, you as an individual, or you as a business rather, then if you don't take those factors into consideration, you do realize that you will be faced with quite a peril. All right. Now, once we've looked at these three factors and we've said, all right, fine. So these are the three main things that today will affect you either as a business or will affect you as an individual. So now, what you should be doing, or what should you be doing as an individual in terms of the types of skills that you will need to acquire? It's no longer going to be enough, or it is no longer, in the next couple of years, it will no longer be enough that you just have a degree that says you're a medical doctor. Because the misconception is that, or what I've come across rather, is that the fourth industrial revolution is only going to affect your low-level workers or your blue-collar workers, right? Your tellers, like we've seen with some of the McDonald's outlets, where people, you walk in there and you are seeing, these monitors where you can actually go and place your order. So that would be a job that would normally have been done by a teller. But, with the introduction, and we're going to see more and more of this, what you saw with Standard Bank closing 91 of its branches was only just the beginning of an even bigger wave that is going to sweep the country and affect everybody in the fourth industrial revolution. So now the question then becomes, is the fourth industrial revolution going to get rid of jobs? All right. And here's my answer to that. All right. And my answer around that is nothing new is happening in terms of jobs being depleted or, disappearing right now, that did not happen as a result of the first industrial revolution, as a result of the second industrial revolution, the third industrial revolution, and so forth, right? So what is happening is, yes, jobs will disappear as we know them, but new types of jobs are going to emerge. Now, let's think about it, all right? I mean, let's give practical examples. Social media manager, that's something that did not even exist. I mean, a good, 10 years ago, that wasn't exactly there. But today we are seeing that, all right, fine. Or in recent years, we've seen that, a lot of people came up to become influencers, to become social media managers and so forth. But even that, as we move and technology keeps advancing the way it is advancing, and we are automating a lot of functions, right? We are seeing a situation where that, even social media managers, their role or their jobs, it's most likely going to disappear, because if we are programming apps and we are programming chatbots and we are developing AI that is able to then do a better job at being able to take big data, all right, being able to mine that big data with data analytics, and then being able to, from then on, be able to see what key factors or what are the key driving factors that can help you be able to, get the right kind of information that can help you make, improve your productivity. Then what is then the purpose of the individual that was a social media manager? Because here is our biggest limitation, the biggest threat, or to the individual and to companies out there, is we have this advent of big data, right? Before, you didn't have to go through so much data in order for you to produce whatever you needed to produce from an informed standpoint, right? But nowadays, you've got so much data that you need to consider. Now, as individuals or as human beings, we are not, quite equipped to manage, to manually work with that big data and be able to get some analytics out of that and be able to make better decisions. So we are using more and more technology or artificial intelligence systems to be able to, cut out, just the right kind of the data that you need, that talks then to your supply chain, or that would then talks to whatever it is that you need to achieve. And then using analytics, then you are able to just really mine that data, all right? And then once you've mined the data, what then happens is now you are able to then write algorithms around this and be able to, even write apps that can then help to really improve your productivity, right? Really help you to reduce your marginal cost, driving costs of production almost down to, zero marginal cost that you're looking at. So now, what does this mean as a parent, or as somebody that is currently worried about whether you'll still be relevant to the industry? Well, what South Africa needs is, we need a relook in terms of our educational system. We need to look at making sure that we are having a more connected communication channel between industry requirements and educational institutions. We've got to ask ourselves, are we aligned in terms of educational system? Are we aligned to what the fourth industrial revolution industry needs are going to be? All right. So I'm trying to cram up so much information into this. But I think, 30 minutes has gone beyond. And I think I'll be able to even unpack better things if we start taking questions right now. So can we take questions?
Yeah, okay. Neil, I think the first question that we want to get to comes from Benita, who says, older people simply can't afford to retire. What's going to happen to them in the fourth industrial revolution?
All right. There are two options that you've got, all right? Option number one, it's either you learn new skills, because nowadays, or in the fourth industrial revolution, your ability to learn new technology as it comes out, or new things as they come out, and unlearn and relearn again, then as long as you're willing to do that, you'll find that you are still relevant in the space. And unfortunately, our educational institutions in the country don't keep up with the speed of change in the industry in terms of remaining relevant to industry requirements. So you've got to take the responsibility of your learning into your own hands, right? And be able to go online and find out what the latest trends are, how within your industry technology is changing, and what are the new requirements, or what are the latest advances that are happening. And this is doable. I've been doing it myself for the last 10 years and so forth, so that at least I remain relevant in the game, right? So that's number one, right? So you don't have much of a choice. It's either you learn, or you're going to find yourself out of a job, or you're not really going to do well in this wave.
So on that point then, Dale, in terms of places where people could currently be going to learn, where they will be able to get information that's relevant, are there any institutions in our country right now that are actually relevant to the type of learning that's needed? And flowing from that, are there sources that we can point people at that will be relevant to them?
All right. So look, from my own experience, a lot of institutions are trying to come up and keep up with the pace. But because of the bureaucracy that would normally be associated with changing a curriculum or updating a curriculum, whereby technology every 6 months we're seeing something new coming out and something new coming out, our institutions are just not in their setup. They're just not designed to adapt to that kind of change at that speed. So my most important, or my best advice that I can give you as an individual, there's something called MOOCs. All right. And I love MOOCs because, you're referring to these online universities. I know that Stanford University, in partnership, I think, with Harvard, if I'm not mistaken, they've got massive online open courses. So these are MOOCs, MOOC. So normally I recommend that one. Did you know that one of the resources that you can go to is one that is called Udacity, just to make you an example. And they offer courses, online courses, all right? And you can actually go there and you'll be surprised at the kind of courses that they offer. Deep machine learning, all right, that's one of them. Imagine doing a course in flying car technology. They actually offer a nano degree in that. So as a first step, I would actually advise you to, check out MOOCs, all right? So like I said, MOOC. Go and check them out. And that's why I say Stanford University, in partnership with Harvard, they've got an excellent MOOC platform that is out there. And most of the time you find that these online courses are free of charge. And some of them, yes, they might require a bit of money, but far, far cheaper, and you'll get far more value, right? Added to you in terms of the new skills that you can start acquainting yourself with. All right. So, Kenton, I think that more or less answers the question in terms of do we have institutions? No, my belief right now is our institutions are not equipped to be able to keep up with the changes. So go online. That's your best resources.
And so then as a parent, what advice do you give to your kids in terms of where they end up going to?
All right. So, number one, I've always said that looking at the way things are, if it were possible for a lot of South Africans, is you need, as a parent, you need to take active participation in your child's education. All right. We are no longer living in an environment that focuses on teaching. We are now living in an environment where the focus is on learning. All right. And this is the thing that I think as a country as well, we are missing. Right. Whenever we come up with interventions around how we can improve our educational system, we look at, our research is generally based on how to improve teaching, right? Or how is teaching supposed to be happening, as opposed to what is happening with learning. So I'll explain this a little bit because I love children. With children, it's very, very interesting because kids, left alone, they will learn things themselves. And let me explain this just a little bit, all right? So Dr. Bruce Lipton, all right, you can look him up, all right? One of the findings that he makes, he explains how the human brain develops. And maybe I might be meandering a little bit, right? But basically, he was referring to between the ages of 0 up to 7, children learn through a state of, theta, or their brain frequency, or the frequency of which they are operating and engaging with the world is they're in a state called theta. And theta, basically, they learn through observation. They learn through, it's like, kind of like they look at you, monkey see, monkey do. All right. So that is the power of your child between the 0 and 7 years old. So you need to understand that the one who has the biggest challenge is you as a parent. So you as a parent, what you then have to do, you have to then come in and start learning and being able to advise your child based on the research that you've done, what is going to be in demand, and be able to direct your child to say, all right, online, this is what we are going to look at. So I just hope that gives more or less an answer to that question.
Well, in fact, this actually ties in with one of our 10 plans, which is that we need to readjust the age at which our kids start school so that they can, in fact, start learning earlier. Because right now, we've set the entry level at which kids start going to school at 7.
Which is a problem.
Whereas, in fact, we need to start it earlier. And in fact, the example that you spoke about was reflected with the OLPC experiment, which was one laptop per kid, where they dropped off boxes of tablets in 2 extremely remote villages.
Yes, I remember that experiment.
Yes. But another question that was raised, and I just want to go back into it again, which was a very significant point. Someone was asking, I'm a 65-year-old with 1 year of coding, and who's going to hire me when they're graduates with the same or better skill? And so learning to code is not an answer, and which I tend to agree with. So
absolutely,
yeah. So what becomes the alternative for people, well, like myself, really?
So here's the thing, right? What is the objective of any form of employment? It's to earn an income. Right? That's the objective of any form of any employment that you're seeking, right? So now here is the thing. How do you compete? Because here's the thing. A child by the age of 12 in India or China has been programming for at least about 5 years, all right? And then we start getting exposed, or you're trying to learn how to program or how to code, and it might not even be a space of your interest, right? And as a person that is at that age, what you are supposed to be asking yourself, rather than saying, how am I going to find employment? Or you should be saying, what are the most viable means of earning an income? What is it that I can learn as a new skill? Yes, technology is to factor in as a new skill in order to earn an income. And I'd like to make an example here, or just paint a picture. All right. One of the things that was supposed to have been introduced in our education, or that was supposed to have been widely adopted, is there's online opportunities whereby through doing certain things online, you can be able to earn an income. And it's one of my biggest sore points, whereby, can you imagine if we had taught our matriculants by the time they're in matric how to actually generate or use the internet to actually generate an income? And I'll give you the simplest example. So Google has something called AdSense, all right? And within AdSense, it's basically something that allows you to put in space for advertisements on your website, right? And one of the things we could have done as a country to teach our kids was to say, all right, this is how you create a basic website. This is how you add or you put in AdSense in order for you to be able to have advertising, Google advertising on your website. All right. And this would have been then a situation whereby once you've put in that feature of AdSense by Google, then you would have a situation whereby every time somebody goes onto this website and they look at an advert and they click on it, guess what? Google then credits you some amount of money. After a certain period, then Google then says, hey, you know what? Your money has gotten to this point and here's your check. All right. And that for me today is still a very big missed opportunity. So if I'm that 61-year-old, the first thing that I'd say is I'd come to terms with the fact that I need to learn new things. I need to learn new ways of making money. What is the new way of earning money? We are going to see a lot more of a situation whereby you should be online and being able to deliver whatever product, whatever service that you can deliver. Whatever it is that you have as a skill, you should be asking yourself, how do I automate this? Or how do I then put this online and be able to scale it to such an extent that I'm exposed to a lot more people or a lot more companies that would probably want the service that I provide?
Just taking a look in terms of other comments that are coming down the pipeline. Gopalang Lakoto was making out a strong case for teaching our kids to learn data labeling. And can you just touch on that, Neil?
All right. So one of the things that, and this was just yesterday as I was just looking through and say, all right, fine. What will the new generation of worker need to be able to do? Irrespective of whatever industry you could have gone into. You could have gone into medicine. You could have gone into accounting. You could have gone, whatever profession that you can think of. All right. The fourth industrial revolution, what is coming or what it's ushering in at the same time, we're going to see a situation whereby big data, and that's provided that we have network neutrality, right? You are going to, as an individual, you're going to be able to access large amounts of big data, all right? And this big data or economic data will be there for you. You'll be able to check out your own data. You'll be able to check out other people's data. You'll be able to see company data and so forth. This big data means nothing if you cannot do anything with it, all right? And one of the things that basically, and I'm in agreement with you, whereby I am saying that one of the key things that kids need to be taught, they need to be taught from an early age, the concepts of data and the concepts of technology, data analytics, and so forth. So as a skill or as something that kids need to be taught in school is, number one, they need, they're going to need to be able to go online, look at this big economic data, and be able to cut the data that is relevant to either their economic activity, be it in a job or be it in their own business or their entrepreneurial ventures. So you cut out your own big data that is relating to your economic activity. And then after that, you will have to know, or these kids have to be taught how to mine the data. And obviously you can't go really too complex at a very young age, but you can start teaching the fundamentals around data mining, all right? So now the future is, whatever profession that you are in, cut your big data from the big economic data that will be available and transparent online, right? Once you've cut this big data, then you've got to be in a position to can be able to mine this data using analytics, all right? And once you have done that and you've mined your specific data specific to your economic activity to improve your productivity, then using that, then you can start being able, or you should be able to either create an app, all right, to be able to efficiently understand that data and be able to make decisions that can improve your ability to deliver more efficiently and so forth. All right. And these are fundamentals that I believe can be taught from a very young age. So data labeling would actually even fall within that spectrum. So by the time you get to matric, at least you've got the basic fundamentals, all right? It doesn't mean everybody's going to be a programmer, but you should then at least be able to know how you are affected by all of this.
Okay, question in terms of the monetization. Someone points out, quite correctly that, on the assumption that you have a website that is being monetized using AdSense, and you end up getting 1 cent on a click, which isn't really a cost-effective business model.
Right.
How does one actually then end up turning that into something that is going to be profitable?
All right, let me just share an idea with you. All right. So here's an idea that I'm trying to get up, get up and going. All right, or to get going. Can you imagine how many companies or how many new entrepreneurs are actually registering new companies with the CIPC, all right? And if you went to the database of the CIPC, you'd find that, there's at least over, 100,000 companies that are being registered almost on a daily basis. Now, imagine if, as a young person or as somebody, referring to this whole AdSense and data analytics, and you're talking the 1 cent factor, right? Imagine if we could be in a situation whereby we could basically offer these companies that are registered, because quite a number of them don't actually have websites, and I know quite a number of companies whereby they are doing very well, but they don't have websites. Others are not doing so well, they're trying to make it out. Because government has done a very, has really pushed everybody to go into entrepreneurship. So almost everybody as an alternative to not finding a job, but then they are most likely going to register a company. So we are seeing that. So imagine if we could go there, every young person, or not every young person, but imagine going there and saying, look, I am willing to create free websites. Once you've learned how to create a website, I am willing to create free websites for about 100 of these registered companies. And I don't think anybody or any entrepreneur or business owner will say, I don't want a free website, right? And you just ask them, like, all you have to do is just pay for your own hosting. And now imagine you create 100 of these websites, all right? You put in the AdSenses, right? You are managing and you're hosting all of these websites, right? Now, that is scalability. And then you take that, right? And you have put in your AdSenses into all of these 100 websites. Now, it means that you are no longer only just looking at one website that is getting, 1 cent clicks, but you're looking at multiple websites, up to 100, and over and above that, then you take into consideration that you won't have to market and advertise this website because you haven't created it for yourself. You've created it for this company. So the owner of the company will be doing marketing, for their own website. So you don't necessarily have to worry about traffic.
And in fact, your cost structure in those situations, Neo, is almost negligible because you can build those websites using Amazon's cloud. You make use of their free tier, which only triggers if you get a significant number of hits on the site. But at that point, you're making money in any case. Question again that comes up: what do you think is the best way to convince policymakers of all of this stuff? Bulletproof. Well, the best way to convince them is to vote for us and get us.
That is the best way. Look, essentially at the end of the day, it's, as ZACP, if we keep, being able to do these town hall meetings and talk about these issues, and you tell more and more of your friends that, look, ZACP is out there, and these are the new ideas, because we pride ourselves in coming up with solutions for problems that are out in the world. And my biggest focus really within the ZACP really is things that have to do with education, things that have to do with the fourth industrial revolution, things that have to do with technology, coming from a background of programming and so forth. So you coming in on board and screaming alongside with us, but making sense and pushing the ideas that we're putting forward, challenging us, you will give us an even bigger voice, where eventually government will have no choice but be forced to look at the ideas that we are putting forward. So, yeah.
Okay, so sorry, I needed to turn my mic back on because I was speaking to thin air there for for a second. And so going back to the whole question of the fact that data is actually required. And, Wesley S. makes the point, fourth industrial revolution without plentiful data available to the public is meaningless.
Absolutely.
We've had a bottleneck for the longest time now because, and we know it was all about the fact that we didn't have the rollout of digital terrestrial television, which we needed to do in order to free up the data spectrum, which would then be rolled out in order to provide cheaper internet
access.
Yeah, and right now our internet costs are still something like 10 times as expensive as what they pay in India, or even Kenya for that matter. Data costs are about a tenth of ours. But in the absence of cheap data or cheaper data, where are the opportunities?
All right. So number one is we've got a situation in South Africa whereby we don't lack young people with incredible talent to innovate in new technologies, and because I've personally been working through my organization, been working with a lot of young people that have really, come up with innovative means of circumventing challenges around data access, around electricity, and so forth. But unfortunately, these young people, they come up with these innovations and they work very hard. And when they go out there, they don't get the kind of support that they're supposed to get that can really leapfrog us into the fourth industrial revolution. And what I'm really referring to, I'll just make you two examples. All right, I've got two young guys that I know that I've been really working with for several years, trying to support them and trying to open up, ways for them in order to develop their technology even further. The first one I'd like to talk about is Shalton Motor, right? And Shalton, he has basically managed to come up with a way of converting radio frequencies and Wi-Fi frequencies into electricity, right? He's got a working prototype, right? And for over 5 years, me and Shalton, I've taken Shalton to a lot of doors to knock on doors. But the kind of investment that is required, can you imagine if you were to invest in this little technology that Shalton has come up with, right? To say, all right, he's already figured out how to convert radio frequencies into electricity, and he's got a prototype that basically is like a mobile bank that does not need to be plugged into anything. It just picks up radio frequencies, and you plug your device into this mobile bank, and it charges. So now we are having a challenge whereby, because of certain red tape, right, our young talent in the country is being driven into a corner of frustration where they end up giving up on their ideas that they have, right? And now let's get to the issue of data access. I won't mention his name, but another good friend of mine and somebody that I've been working with for quite some time, he's managed to reverse engineer what would be a typical router, right? And what he has been able to do, he has been able to create, for layman's terms, just to put it in the most simplest form, he's been able to been able to find a way of creating a Wi-Fi transmitter that allows for people to be able to access data that would otherwise be sitting on the internet. So I do not actually want to explain it exactly how it works, because IP situation, but at the rate that we are going in, because of the types of challenges that we are having, young people in this country are going to innovate the country out of the challenges that it is facing. And it is our responsibility to spot these young talented people and be able to support them in however way that we can, because like it or not, government is not fully equipped to understand when a Shalton walks in and he says that I'm a nuclear physicist and I've managed to come up with a way of converting radio frequencies and Wi-Fi frequencies into electricity. they just see a kid that is coming in there and he's talking hogwash. And then you got this other guy who's managed to reverse engineer a router that is now he's currently running a pilot project, all right, somewhere around the country, whereby school kids are now connected to this Wi-Fi that he's been able to create. And the community now is accessing internet via this technology that he has been able to invent. And there's a South African young person that has been able to do this. So, if the rest of the mobile companies out there that are supplying data and so forth do not come up with new business models for their business sustainability, they are going to be innovated out of business the same way you saw with the codec. It might take us a bit of time, but it will happen.
Yeah, I think that we almost at the end of our hour. The example that you raised in terms of the telcos is really significant, because I think that they are still focusing so much on actually selling call units and SMS bundles and the likes, when in fact, as soon as people move into a situation where they have fiber connectivity, and they then basically open up their Wi-Fi to everyone who comes into their space, that entire business model falls away.
It's fraud.
Yes. So again, if we take a view in terms of other major businesses, like right now, I think most of us, when we go out to buy fresh vegetables, we'll normally go to a place like Woolworths.
Yeah.
And I can see a situation in the not too distant future where every single one of us has an automated hydroponic system in our home, which is governed by robotics and which is governed by artificial intelligence, that is adjusting lighting, and it is adjusting drip feeding, and it is ensuring that you are growing exactly the type of vegetables that you want to grow in your home on an ongoing basis, without the costs in terms of the cold chain and the transport logistics. And essentially, when we buy vegetables from Woolworths, that's what we're paying for. We're paying for the cold chain, we are paying for transportation logistics, all of which will be displaced by Fourth Industrial Revolution. So, you and I have spoken about some of these other areas. Do you want to just touch on those very quickly?
All right. One of the important things that, I like to say, look, one of the biggest things that we saw in terms of, the previous industrial revolutions, things that really led to certain countries flourishing was, the whole advent of mass production. Right. But because we are so spoiled for choice nowadays, people are now like the next big thing that's really, really going to take over. We are going to see, mass customization being something of a really big thing, mass customization, because now that there's abundance, now people are saying, I'm looking for something that actually talks to me, right? And now enter the 3D printer into the space. And you look at that kind of situation. So now, when I'm able to say, look, this is the kind of device, or this is exactly what I want. So, and I'm able to walk into a store and I buy this 3D printer only once, all right? And I go back home with it and I sit with that 3D printer and say I'm producing car parts, just to make you an example, all right? For instance, you are running a big store, right? It's a big warehouse and you're normally selling car parts from that, and you've got a staff complement of about 100 people, right? Because you know what? You need to send people as clients walk in and they are ordering a certain part. People need to walk in somewhere and actually be able to locate the part number, using the part number, locate the part wherever it is sitting in the warehouse, and then take it back to the front desk for the client to actually walk out with that, right? Now, what does that involve? All right, parts means that this reseller of car parts had to order these parts from somewhere. So there's transport logistics that is involved in that, right? So transportation, those are costs. Those are things that actually add up to the final retail price when a client walks in and he wants to buy a part, all right? But now we are moving into a world where we are talking about, you could go as far as getting to a point of zero marginal cost. right? Whereby, for instance, get a 3D printer, because already there's 3D printers out there. We are going to get to a point whereby instead of you walking into a big warehouse that houses car parts, you're going to walk into the small room that houses just this 3D printer, and you don't need a staff complement of 20 people. You just need this one guy, and you'll talk to that guy, all right? That's still even rudimentary. You'll talk to this guy, and you'll tell him that, look, this is the kind of car that I drive, and this is the kind of part that I'm looking for. Here's the part number. And this person, will actually be able to talk to or send a message to a manufacturer who's sitting somewhere in Germany or sitting somewhere, and say, look, here's the required part. And the manufacturer will then be able to release, either something that allows this person to actually be able to print a car part, and I'll be taking a car part that I need. I'm just citing a practical example that is actually going to happen, whether you like it or not. So the situation is that now we are moving to zero marginal cost, because now the cost that he would have incurred to actually order parts and actually have them brought to his warehouse have been greatly reduced. The cost of paying rent, all right, in this big warehouse is greatly reduced, because guess what? He no longer needs to store these parts, right? So meaning that this is going to drive down costs of products as well as services. And you'll see this across many different industries.
Okay, I think we just about wrapped up. I think maybe we should just take this final question, Neo, which comes from Cryptic Ecstasy, who wants to know, how much does a 3D printer cost?
Well, at the moment, right? Generally, when you come into the first time I came across a 3D printer, let's start there, was in 2013, and I was in a little city called Nifferen in Germany. All right, and at the time, this was still such a very, very big machine, right? And the one that I saw at that time, it was retailing at about some 200 euros, something like that. And it wasn't doing anything really, really special. Nowadays, what you will find, because you get different 3D printers that print different things, all right, for different needs. So, but an entry-level 3D printer, I think you should be able to get it round about, in South African rand, around about 10,000 rand, 15,000 rand, but you're not doing anything major with it, right? But what we know with technology is, as it advances, year on year, we see the price of technology dropping. So the cost might be a factor at the moment where people are unable to get not a lot of people are able to invest in that, right? But going forward, you're going to see a situation whereby you'll be looking at it and say, look, the cost of getting this thing is about 150,000 rand. I don't have 150,000 rand. But when you do your calculations and you're running a business, you're saying, all right, fine, but I will be able to save this much through getting this 3D printer. So as a result, my return on investment, I'll probably break even at such and such a time. And from that point on, I'll just be working on profit. And, quite a couple of factors that you've got to consider. Yes, right now, relatively quite expensive. But I am telling you that we know technology year on year. The price of technology keeps dropping as new advances are made and new products are released around it.
So I think that's probably a good point for us to wrap this up now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. And watch the space. Subscribe to this channel to keep up with stuff that we're coming up on an ongoing basis. Just to reiterate Neo's point that once we are in Parliament, we will be doing weekly report back sessions, exactly like we're doing right now. To keep you up to speed with what's happening in Parliament, the way in which we think that it should actually be managed. And at that point, issuing calls to action if we actually need support from people on particular pieces of legislation or driving public discourse in a particular direction. So thank you once again, and we'll see you next time, same space.